I can always spot it. That look, that quietly frustrated look that a photographer gets when they just know that there has to be something more than just technical, more than getting the exposure right, more than the lighting just being perfect, and certainly more than the composition being balanced. I know that look. And do you know why I know that look? It's because I used to wear it myself. And if that's you right now, if you are a photographer looking for something more, I want you to stay with me, because I believe I've got an answer for you. It all started back in the 1990s with a book that was put into my hands. And if I showed you that book right now, you would probably laugh. You'd say, Martin, how on earth could a book have ignited what you're doing today? Because today, my photography is part of a creative process, and the camera is just one of the instruments within it. I'm blessed to be able to showcase my work in my own art galleries, and my work is collected worldwide. And I've been teaching the fine art of photography for over 30 years, and it all started with a book, a seed if you like. And by the end of this conversation, I can promise you, you will never see photography in the same way again. I'll show you the book, but not now. I'll show it to you a little bit later. First, I'd like to give you a little bit more context, and certainly about my life as a professional photographer back then when this happened. And I want to be very clear about something. They say if you leave room for misunderstanding, you will be misunderstood. When I was practicing photography back then, I was not frustrated. I was not unhappy. I was not searching. I absolutely loved what I was doing. I mean, I had a storeroom packed full of photographic equipment. I had large format cameras. I had medium format cameras. I had 35mm cameras. I had studio lights, soft boxes, honeycombs, snoots, you name it. I mean, I used to joke with people to say the best part of my day was when I walked into the storeroom early in the morning with a cup of coffee, just to look at the fruits of my labor and to enjoy the smell of the equipment. And I'm not joking. There is just something so special about the smell of photographic equipment. I mean, the best is when you unpack a new camera. The aroma is so creative. It's like the smell of fixer in a darkroom. It just gets one's creative juices flowing. And for any of you who worked in a darkroom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's how much I loved photography. Every day was a challenge, a technical challenge as a commercial photographer. I mean, clients would bring me challenging subjects to be photographed, even boring subjects in most cases that I had to make look exciting for advertising. I was involved in fashion and glamour photography. I was involved in car photography. I was involved in jewelry photography, food photography. I mean, you name it. And what I liked most about the challenge was that it had to be done properly. It was exciting, it was technically demanding, and most of the projects had tight deadlines. And without being too forthcoming, with all the practice I was getting and the fact that I was teaching at the same time, I was damn good at it. But here's what I didn't know. I didn't know that there's another world available to me. You know, they say that ignorance is man's worst enemy. And at that point, I was completely ignorant to what photography could become within a creative process. I was engulfed, I was comfortable and content, and I felt energized. And yet, deep down, instinctively, I knew there was more. I just didn't know what it was or where to find it, but I knew I was merely scratching the surface. You see, and this is something I rarely speak about publicly, but my father was a wonderful man, a beautiful human being who wanted only the best for his family. But when I was growing up, he would never allow me to do art at school. In his mind, an artist was not able to put food on the table, or consistently put food on the table, as he said, and wouldn't be able to sustain his family. So he really discouraged me from pursuing art. But when I said to him, I want to do photography, he was fully supportive, because photography in his mind was technical. It was a profession. It made sense. And he became my very best supporter. I mean, I remember he helped me build a darkroom. He even helped me purchase equipment, which, by the way, he made me pay for. He made me pay him back with interest. And he said to me it was a lesson that I needed to learn. And he wasn't wrong. He also helped me to build my first commercial studio. As I said, he was my number one supporter. But what neither of us realized at that time was there was an artist inside me, quietly waiting, not frustrated, not demanding, just waiting. And when that book arrived in my hands, the artist in me finally got the message he had been waiting for all of his life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into the story about the book itself, I want to tell you about two important lead-ups, one of which is a moment that happened in my photographic college canteen. It was a conversation I was never meant to hear, and 4 words that hit me like a ton of bricks. And the other one was earlier than this, when my wife and I took a holiday to Nysen in the Western Cape. We'd had our first baby boy, and it was simply time away, family time, nothing more. And walking through the shopping mall one afternoon, I passed a gallery. It was Dale Elliott's gallery. Now, if you don't know Dale Elliott's work, look it up. He was a pure painter. He painted rural scenes of South Africa, landscapes, workers in the field, and seascapes. I would describe his work as honest, but with lots of texture. And often he painted with thick, generous paint that made every scene come alive. And there was a slight abstract look to his work that just made everything feel timeless. I walked in and it was like time stood still. I moved from painting to painting. I must have been in his gallery for half an hour or more. And what I felt standing in front of his work wasn't admiration exactly. It was more like a recognition. Something in me recognized something in that work, and I didn't fully understand why. But I really liked it. And when I walked out, there was a small pamphlet on the table. Dale Elliott was offering painting workshops at the time. And I picked it up and thought, I'd love to spoil myself by attending one of his workshops. But unfortunately, I never did. But more importantly, I thought one day when I retire, I'd like to do this. I would like to have a personal artistic space like he had, and then also offer classes because, teaching is part of my life. I kept this thought quietly to myself. Some things you keep deep inside. I suppose you don't quite know what to do with it yet, and maybe that's why I did that. But the soil was definitely prepared for the seed to be planted. But isn't it funny? I just didn't know it at the time. So let's get back to the book, the all-important book. Not long after that holiday, somebody walked into my office and placed it in front of me. And I can't tell you who it was exactly, and that surprises me because I usually don't forget things like that. And it wasn't a technical book about photography. It wasn't even a photographer's book on their philosophy. It was simply a book about hand coloring of photographs. The Marshall's book on hand coloring of photographs. And I'm going to put it up here so that you can see it now. There you go. And now you can understand why I said you'd probably laugh. But this was the book. This was the book that changed my life. This person walked in and said, Martin, have you ever seen this? And put the book down in front of me. And then said, Does this make sense to you? And then walked away. I paged through the book. Some of the work inside, I must admit, I found a little overdone, a little too theatrical. But there were a number of landscapes and urban environments where photography served as a foundation and then transformed through the hand-painting process into something else entirely. It was as if photography and paint had come together in an incredibly special way. Something that felt honest, something that felt like Dale Elliott's work. And in my spirit, quietly, something had connected. I didn't run with it immediately, I must admit. I still had a college to run. I had a commercial studio to manage. I had students to teach and clients to serve. But the book haunted me. So I did what any curious person does when something won't leave them alone. I took out my credit card and I ordered the Marshall's Master Kit from New York. Photographic oils, dyes, photographic pencils. I remember there's a product called Marlene Solution. I didn't even know what it was, but it sounded really cool. But I ordered the works just to appease my curiosity. I had no idea where this was going. It cost me an arm and a leg, but it needed to be done. And I believe now, looking back, that those steps were ordered. That gallery visit in Osner was not a coincidence. That person who walked into my office that day was certainly not a coincidence. I don't know who it was, but I certainly know why he or she turned up. And when that kit arrived from New York, I can tell you I was like a child in a candy store. Something was bubbling inside me that I hadn't felt before. And I decided to take a week and go to the Kruger National Park just to photograph. To photograph what? Animals? I hear you say, no, of course not. Thorn trees. In the African bushveld, I just love photographing trees. But this time I knew it would be different because I'd be photographing now with a painting in my mind. And that was a huge change for me. And here is where something shifted that as a photographer, I want you to pay very close attention to. For the first time in many, many years, I left my tripod at home. In fact, I only packed the bare essentials, and that was very unlike me. No tripod, no meticulous composition, no technical perfection, no waiting for the light to show up or planning around when the light might show up. I found myself concentrating more on the important things like shape, texture, and even more importantly, on emotion. There was something just looser in my spirit. It almost felt like I was on what could we call it, a artistic holiday. When I got back from that trip, I was so fired up. I processed the film on the very same day, printed it in the darkroom on this beautiful fiber-based paper. And don't get me wrong, the photograph wasn't brilliant. It was nice, but not brilliant. And in those days, you must appreciate there was no great Photoshop assistance, no internet to look up things, no community of artists you could dial up in a moment just to ask. It was just me, my fiber-based print, and the kit from New York. And I can tell you when I put the first brushstroke of paint onto that photograph, not only did the photograph start to come alive, but my friends, something in me started to come alive. It was almost emotional. The very act of artistic intent was overwhelming. And yet, funny enough, I was still unsure. I worked quietly behind closed doors, just in case it was Martin taking a detour into irrelevance. And isn't it funny? Even when something feels completely right, we still find a way of questioning it. And then came the moment of the canteen, or the moment in the canteen, a life-changing moment, a wake-up call, if you will. This is something I don't often share because it's quite personal, but I think it's important for today's conversation. At the National College of Photography, where I taught, the canteen wasn't grand. It was really just a kitchen that had been turned into a student tuck shop, and in the back there was an area where the lecturers could make tea or coffee. And my office was just across the way, and I could always hear the cups and the conversation and the laughter when tea time came around. And one afternoon I was heading over to join them, and as I approached, I heard one of the junior lecturers ask a question. He said, "How would you know it's Martin's work?" You see, they were talking about if someone did not sign a photograph, how would you know it's theirs? I stopped. I didn't walk in. You don't impose yourself on a conversation like that, especially when your name is in it. So I stood there and I listened. Now, I must tell you about Dirk, because Dirk was in that conversation. Dirk was one of the most talented photographers I have ever met. Not just technically. His creative thinking was exceptional. And he had been one of my students and was now one of my senior lecturers. And I held his opinion in the highest regard. So when Dirk answered that question, I was listening very carefully. And he said something like this. He said, "Martin's work, that's simple. It's technically perfect. You will not find a mistake." My goodness. I mean, to be honest, my first feeling was pride. I was genuinely proud of this because this was Dirk saying it, a man whose technical and artistic eye I respected completely. He was acknowledging something that I had worked very hard to achieve. I turned around quietly and walked back to my office and sat down. And then it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Technically perfect. Technically perfect means predictable. It means that anybody who knows photography can look at your work without your name on it and know immediately you made it. Not because of your artistic voice, not because of your vision or emotion or unique way of seeing or presenting the world, but because of your technique or skill, like a craftsman. So not a photographic artist, a craftsman. The fact is, I was so technically proficient that I had become artistically invisible. Do you know, I never told anybody of that moment, not a colleague, not my wife, nobody. I didn't feel it was the right place or right time, and honestly, I didn't know what to do with it yet. I just knew one thing was absolutely certain. Something had changed. Here's what I want you to hear, because I don't think I'm alone with this. I think there are many photographers, both amateur and professional, watching right now who are technically brilliant. Those who have studied the craft, mastered the light, and understood the equipment. And who could easily receive the same compliment from Dirk that he gave me that day. And if that's you, I suggest you just sit with that very same question for a moment. What is your DNA? Well, I did not have the answer, but the message was certainly delivered loud and clear. The soil that had been prepared, the seeds that had been planted, the gallery in Osner, the book itself, the kit from New York, that very first brushstroke on the thorn tree print was about to start growing in ways I could have never anticipated. But I just want to say something important before I go any further, because I don't want you to get the wrong message here. I have never undervalued my technical training, not for a single moment. The years I spent mastering light, understanding how to control it, natural light or controlled light, soft light, hard light, strip lighting, backlighting, mixed lighting, you name it. That wasn't wasted time for me. That was foundation being laid. They say if you truly want to master a subject, teach it. And that is so true. And I taught light for so many years until it became completely intuitive to me. Until it wasn't something I thought about anymore. It was rather, and this is important, something I felt. And then I also realized something. You cannot truly master light. Anybody who says, I'm a master of light, I think needs to be double checked. Because light will always master you. At best, you can learn to understand light and only predict its characteristics. That technical foundation is still there. It will always be there. I mean, back in those days, I just didn't know that I had hit my ceiling, a creative ceiling, if you like. And I didn't realize there was way more beyond what I thought I understood. So what is different today? What has actually changed? Well, when I pick up a camera and I walk in to take a photograph, my mindset is completely different. From the ground up, it's completely different. Today I'm thinking not about technical photography. I'm thinking about painting. I'm thinking about art. I'm asking myself, how will this piece look if it was on exhibition? And I haven't even taken it yet. When I look through the viewfinder becomes my canvas for the exhibition. And I respect that canvas. And I imagine myself standing in front of that finished piece on a gallery wall. The way I stood in front of Dale Elliott's paintings all those years ago in Osner. The composition, the communication, the feeling coming back through the viewfinder, it all has to become instinctive. I mean, to the point where I won't even take a photograph if I'm not feeling it. I mean, bad files are like uninvited relatives who turn up at your home late on a Sunday afternoon and just refuse to go home. And they end up cluttering your hard drive. I don't take thousands of photographs hoping that one works, because for me, it's never just a photograph. The starting point is an artistic endeavor, and you have to learn to feel it. And here is where it gets even more deeper, because this shift in mindset didn't just change how I photographed, it changed how I see what I'm going to photograph. Today, everything around me is a possible subject. Things in my home, objects in my studio, light falling across something in a room, the very neighborhood that surrounds me, everything. I mean, I see compositions and photographs in the ordinary fabric of daily life, and I genuinely believe that this is one of the gifts, or the many gifts that the Lord has given me through this journey. But perhaps the most profound change, and I must say this having watched it happen to not only myself, but to my daughter Samantha Lee, who's also involved in fine art photography, but even more importantly to hundreds of students over the last 30 years, and it's this. In the past, creating started and stopped with the click of a shutter. Yes, I understand that back in the days we would need to still go into the darkroom to process the film and to print the prints, and today we can process the file digitally. But this is mainly a technical reproduction. The creative act began and ended in one moment, and that moment was a click of the shutter. And now the click of the shutter, certainly for me and what I teach, is just the beginning. Because what follows is a process. I mean, the hand painting and embellishing is just one of the many craft techniques. There are layers of creativity, decision-making, and experimentation that carry the image from photograph to artwork. And it's in this process, in these quiet hours of creating, that something happens that goes far beyond photography. I've watched this transformation happen in my students, and I don't want to speak for all mankind, but what I see time and time again is this. It's not necessarily about what we create, it's about the process of creating. Because in the process lies what can best be described as a peaceful space, a space where the world quietens down for a while. And that, my friends, in the world that we're living in today, is not just beautiful, it's vital and it's necessary. But do you know what gives me the greatest joy in what I do today? It's not the art galleries, it's not the exhibitions or the recognition or any of that. As wonderful as these things are, it's seeing one of my students believe in themselves for the very first time. And I've seen it hundreds of times. I mean, a student puts forward a piece that they've been working on, quietly convinced that it's not good enough, it's not finished, it's not worthy, they're not good enough. And then the class reacts in a positive way, and I react in a positive way, and something shifts in that person's face. It's beautiful. A realization creeping in that perhaps there is something there worth paying attention to. Maybe I've nailed it, maybe I've got it. I truly believe there's an artist in everyone. And certainly in that moment, that realization happens. That specific moment of self-belief is born in another human being who realized their creativity and their connection. And that, my friends, is the reason why I teach. Isn't it funny that we don't always see our own gifts and talents? It normally takes somebody else to hold up that mirror. And I suppose in a way, that is exactly what happened to me. A friend whose name I can't even remember held up a mirror in the form of a book, and everything changed, which brings me to Samantha, my daughter. I mean, I have 3 children, all very different. Samantha is the middle child. She did very well academically at school, but during her gap year, she was preparing for varsity. She walked into one of my live classes in the studio one day. She told me she was bored and asked if she could sit in. Well, not only did she sit in, but she's never left. And what I've watched and observed in her over the years has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. She walked the same road I walked, technically proficient at first, then commercially proficient in her photography, then into art photography, then into fine art photography, and now she's also doing pure paintings. The same journey, the same progression, the same moments of self-doubt that I had, convinced that her work is not good enough until clients walk into the gallery and start investing in her pieces. And now she is finally seeing herself, 14 odd years later, as an artist who creates with a camera, one of the tools on the workbench of art. You've got to understand that seed, that one little book placed on my desk by a person I cannot even name, is now growing in my daughter's life today. And honestly, I don't have words to tell you what that feels like. I mean, after the day in the canteen, the day Dirk's words hit me like a ton of bricks in the quiet of my office, I made a decision. I made a decision that everybody around me at the time, including my family, thought was madness. I mean, I stopped commercial photography completely. I passed all my clients on to my assistant. I sold my studio and my lighting equipment that I had spent years accumulating, some of which I even gave away so that I had no excuse to come back to that predictability space that I was in. I walked away from controlled studio lighting completely and forced myself entirely into the natural world. I gave up my career as a commercial photographer. I mean, really a lucrative career on the strength of just one sentence and one little book. As I said, my own family questioned me, "Have you thought about this, Martin? Are you sure about this, Martin?" And I can tell you in the first years as I progressed into more emotive photography, there were moments I almost gave up. I mean, but even in the difficulty, and at times I was really concerned. I was concerned, what if this goes all wrong? I mean, am I prepared to live off the smell of an oil rag, as they say? But even in that time where I was a little bit apprehensive, or very apprehensive, I was immensely happy. I truly believed I was on the right road. I started this conversation asking you whether you felt there was more to your photography than what you were currently doing, whether you recognize that quiet restlessness, that ceiling you couldn't see past, or in fact, if you were like me, did not even realize was there until today's discussion. So I want to end off by telling you this. That restlessness is not a problem to be solved. It is a seed being planted. It could very well be you that walks into a gallery one day that stops time, or a book that's put into your hands by a friend, a conversation that you maybe overheard, which shakes you to the core. That moment a brushstroke brings a photograph to life for the very first time. None of it is coincidence. My advice to you today is follow your heart, not your head. Embrace the little pathways that appear unexpectedly and head off in a completely different direction. Because I cannot even comprehend what my life would look like today had I ignored these moments. I mean, I sometimes think I would have been a retired photographer. I mean, maybe technically brilliant, but artistically invisible. I mean, with no voice of my own and a whole lot of aged photographic equipment in this huge storeroom that I now need to get rid of. Someone who walks down the corridors of the home smelling the older cameras just because of the nostalgia. I mean, that is probably where I would have ended up. My friends, stay on the pathway that you've been given, especially if that pathway has been orchestrated by a caring, loving, unbelievably personal God. If this conversation has stirred something in you, I'm glad. That stirring is exactly where it should begin. And for those of you who are ready to take that first practical step to move from photographer to artist, as a hobby or professionally, I've put together a lot of what I've learned over the last 40 years into a course called Getting Started in Art Photography. The link is below. It won't teach you photography. It'll teach you to make art. And if you know someone who needs to hear this conversation today, please share it. You never know, you might be the friend who places that very special book in someone's hands. Until next time, God bless and go well.